what's your solution to this problem? What turns this from being an observation about relative decline of the UK, I guess more broadly, to here's something we can do about it?
So if you look at this industry, your starting point is two very strong things. You have a product called commercial insurance, which is an amazing instrument. You can go out and arrange $500 million a cover from a relatively small number of institutions. And if you compare that to other instruments, you might need 50 institutions at times to get that level of financing. So you have the concept of insurance, which is an enormously valuable instrument that emboldens businesses. It allows them to take risk knowing that they're protected. And you have a really healthy range of people in this industry. But it's what those people are required to do. And what you've seen through that soft market, you've seen the sidelining of technical skill. It isn't that wholesale the technical skill isn't there. There's a lot of technical capability in brokers and insurers. But the major thing that really needs to change is the entire way in which the underwriters and the brokers engage with customers. And I think that they have to think much harder about how they serve the true needs of customers and how they challenge the buyers at times as to whether or not they're representing the true needs of those customers.
So how do you bring people together to make a change?
So we're launching a program of consultation, a program of conversation over the next 12 months, where every 2 months we will host a seminar dinner where we will be inviting a range of customers and brokers and underwriters and lawyers to discuss these issues. And the issues we will be looking at are subjects like skill decline, skill sidelining, the standardization of wordings, broker remuneration, standards of disclosure. And in particular, what we're going to look at is the legislation. You've got an industry which is at a juncture where the country itself is at a critical juncture for obvious reasons that don't need repeating. But you've also got an industry that's at a critical juncture where over a decade it's gone from being the third largest non-life market to the fifth largest non-life market. You have a huge change in risk evolution. You have the digital developments, you have the climate change developments, you have huge changes in business interruption exposures, professional negligence exposures. There's a significant shift in the risk landscape. And what you saw another thing which was unique in a century, which was a complete rebasing of the legislation that sits under every commercial insurance contract. So you had the Insurance Act 2015 and the insurance provisions in the Enterprise Act 2016. And the overriding objective of the Law Commission in bringing that legislation in was to professionalise insurance placement. Now, with that legislation, we were the single biggest provider of evidence to the Law Commission, which allowed them to introduce that legislation to Parliament. And on the most controversial aspects of the legislation, where we wanted the ability to hold an insurer to account for damages if their delays in paying a claim were unreasonable and caused further damage to a business, we drafted the final amendments of that and negotiated an agreement with the industry, and those amendments were accepted by government. That legislation is based on a concept in government which is referred to as nudge theory. And that is the idea that you will legislate at a relatively high level and then the industry will develop practices to respond to that. And the progress hasn't been sufficient. And so what we're looking at is we had a whole program of legislation, a whole program of law reform, which was aimed at professionalising placement. And we haven't seen the progress that we expected.
If the industry won't reform itself, essentially you're going to pull together a long list and say to government, we'd like you to legislate on this.
No, I don't think this needs any more government intervention. And I don't even think FCA intervention is the thing. This is about educating, as much as anything, the demand side about the value of insurance. This is about challenging the way in which brokers and insurers market and sell insurance. Because the way they market it and sell it at the moment, they leave customers vulnerable. They think they've got cheap insurance, but they also think they've got cheap insurance that works. So when you, for example, are happy to arrange insurance without ensuring that the customer properly investigates their risk and properly disclose, the risk of that isn't to the underwriter or the broker. The risk of that is to the policyholder. So when you sell insurance on the basis that it's going to be cheap, or there might be a blip in a hard market, but then it will be cheap again, and we can run this in a way where you can do the minimal amount of work and pay the minimal amount of money, what they don't say is, but you're going to end up with some third-rate insurance arrangement that doesn't provide the protection that your audit and risk committees think you have.